the following video, we're going to be taking a look at taking a very long kind of poetic romantic quote about someone's life from a book that I really enjoyed, All the Wrong Moves by Sasha Chapin, and we're going to be converting it into a pared down version from the author of Wabi Sabi, who was saying that you can pare something down without killing off its poetry. We're going to be trying GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, and we're going to be hitting GPT 4 in a number of different ways to get it to maintain the base without losing the poetry. If you want to see the text companion, it will be in the description below, and I'll see you later. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at another book quote. This quote in particular is from Rework, and it talks about how the author of a book on Wabi Sabi gave this advice. You want to pare something down to the essence, but you don't want to remove the poetry. You want to keep things clean and unencumbered, but you don't want to sterilize it. In some of my previous videos, I have used the book Does Writing Have a Future by Willem Flusser, and a lot of the stuff that he talks about is similar to this as well. When you're writing, you have to kind of like really simplify your message and tear away at it, but you can't tear away at it so much that the core message is lost. But then the opposite is also true, where if you just have too many boilerplate words, you lose the message and you bury it, and the reader won't be able to find what the message is. So I think what could be interesting is to basically let GPT use this as a summarizing tool to keep something clean without sterilizing it and making it kind of tasteless. So I'm going to give it a few quotes, and then we're going to have it do this to it. We're going to see if we can shorten it down without sterilizing it. So this first quote here is pretty long. This is from All the Wrong Moves by Sasha Chapin, and he has a really interesting writing style. So I think that this is actually why I wanted to try with this book first, is that he kind of writes in a very poetic conversational style, but also packs in a ton of density here. So I won't read this word for word because that'll probably be pretty boring, but I'll summarize what the quote is. So at first, that's how I was performing. Weirdly, I found myself caring about this. I was emotionally involved. My teenage self, the one to whom the game was life, was surprisingly close to the surface. That self felt quite foolish, especially when Tinjing began chatting with the crowd, evidently needing little concentration to wipe me off the board. This was not the dramatically correct version of this scene, in which the mysterious foreigner stuns the people of Kathmandu with this preternatural skill. But about 4 games in, some long resting regions in my brain lit up. Somehow I recalled that some of my favorite ways of playing the poison pawn variation of the wind waver French defense. You might say that it's a murder-suicide kind of chess opening. The player with the black pieces starts by generously giving a few of the delicious pawns to his opponent's hungry queen. This is a strange thing to do, because an extra pawn often decides the game if neither king gets checkmated in the initial stages. However, the pawn can also get in the way of an attack. They can keep your position secure, but they lock your pieces in as well. They're your trusty dumb infantry who gleefully stagger forward until they hit an obstacle and sit on it immovably. By giving some away, you erase the architecture from the board, allowing your forces to gallop all over. Rather than creating the conditions on which the game might well be a draw, you pull out a knife and declare that somebody's going to die. So I actually ended up reading that word for word, because you can see how interesting it was to read that word for word, right? Like there's a kind of flow to the way that Sasha writes that's very interesting and captivating. So we're actually going to keep our temperature low, and we're going to say pare down this quote to the poetry of it. So pare down the below quote as Leon Hardcoren advised. So let's see. Okay, so it's obviously way shorter. Let's see if it kind of gives us a similar kind of feeling. I found myself emotionally involved in the game, feeling foolish as Tinjing effortlessly defeated me. However, after a few games, I remembered my favorite way of playing the poison pawn variation of the French defense. This opening involves sacrificing pawns to erase the board's architecture and allow me for more movement. It's like a murder-suicide tactic in chess. So I would say that a lot of the poetry kind of disappeared from that quote, specifically kind of like, rather than creating conditions under which the game might well be a draw, you pull out a knife and declare that somebody's going to die. Like, that's pretty funny, right? So we did actually end up losing a bit of that poetry. So let's see if we can get something better out of GPT-4 instead of GPT 3.5 Turbo. So let's move up to 4. Let's just try that and see where we end up. Okay, so now it's saying what it needs to do. At first, I performed with emotion, my teenage self invested in the game, but as Tinjing engaged the crowd, my dormant skills awakened. I recalled the poison pawn variation of the French defense, a risky chess opening. By sacrificing pawns, the board's architecture devolves, freeing your forces to roam. Instead of a potential draw, a knife is drawn, declaring a decisive outcome. So this actually reads a lot better. This reads a lot more poetic. It reads a lot more terse. A lot more of the details from this initial very large quote were maintained, and also it just feels better. So I want to try one more time, but I want to copy this result here, and we're going to put it into a comment so that we can keep this because it's good. And we'll say that this was the GPT-4 result. The GPT-3.5 result is lost to time because I'm not going to undo until I get it back. I'm just not going to do that. But this time we're going to say pare down as Leonard Cohen advised, write out each step as a chain of thought reasoning as to why to keep or remove it. And I'm going to up the max tokens a little bit because I think that this might go long if there's like a list. Okay, so now it's writing, okay, the essence of the quote. So it's saying first. So this implies that it's going to add some poetry in the next one. Okay, interesting. So now it's actually telling us what it thinks that the quote is that's pared down. And then we are going to see if we agree about if it keeps the author's experiences. And okay, so let's see what it says. So first, let's identify the essence of the quote. The main idea is the author's experience of playing chess and rediscovering an opening strategy. The quote conveys the author's emotion and the strategy's unique characteristics. So it says this is the pared down quote. Initially, I performed poorly and felt foolish, especially as Tenjing entertained the crowd. However, my dormant chess skills resurfaced, and I remember the poison pawn variation of the French defense. This strategy involves sacrificing pawns to create a more dynamic and aggressive game rather than aiming for a draw. Okay, so it says remove the mention of the author's teenage self and the mysterious foreigner. Keep the author's emotions, but simplify them to contrast between feeling foolish and rediscovering his skills. Retain the specific chess opening strategy as it's central to the quote's essence. Keep the explanation of the strategy, but simplify it to focus on the key idea of sacrificing pawns. And then remove the metaphor of pulling out a knife as it doesn't add essence and might be considered overly dramatic. So I actually don't agree. Okay, so we're going to tell it to turn up the poetry though. Turn up the poetry. This pared down quote felt bland. Sorry about the noise. My upstairs neighbors are just so loud. Okay. Oh, wow. This is already a lot better. And this actually goes to show again, like depending on how you interface with these models, you get very different output, right? So sometimes, a lot of the times when people come to me and they're like, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. I'm like, well, did you try it in multiple ways or did you just give up after the first time? So let's see this enhanced quote with more poetry. At first, I stumbled in my performance, my emotions surfacing as I felt the weight of my teenage self-passion for the game. Tenjing's effortless banter with the crowd only amplified my foolishness. Yet, as the games unfolded, a spark ignited within my long dormant chess mind. I found myself embracing the daring dance of the poison pawn variation of the French defense. This bold strategy breathed life into the game by offering pawns as sacrificial lambs, tearing down the board's rigid architecture and unleashing a whirlwind of dynamic, aggressive play. No longer seeking a stalemate, we now danced on the edge of a razor where victory and defeat hung in balance. So this hits way harder, and actually, I'll leave it to you to decide if you prefer the original quote, which is at the top here that I'm highlighting in the text version below. You can go and click it and you can read it in the text companion, or the one that GPT came up with, because honestly, I'm torn. This one's a lot shorter. It gets across a lot of the feeling and the emotion that the original had. And this is also beautiful. We now danced on the edge of a razor where victory and defeat hung in balance. I still slightly prefer, rather than creating conditions under which the game might well be a draw, you pull out a knife and declare that somebody's going to die. I think that's kind of more interesting to me because there's more intent behind it and more like kind of like you can feel the pressure of the author kind of being pushed on by this young chess teenager in a country that's unfamiliar to him, and he kind of lashes out like a cornered animal. But this is also really nice. Really, I really like this, the idea of kind of like lining up pawns as sacrificial lamb and tearing into the architecture of aggressive play. So I guess, honestly, I'm very impressed with how this was written. So we're going to try one more thing. We're going to rewrite this as a haiku, and let's see what it comes up with. Rewrite this as a haiku, and this is just for fun. Okay, so we're actually going to check this. Chess skills reawaken. Okay, we already failed. Poisoned pawns, daring dance. 6 again. Victory. I don't know if that's 3. Victory or fall. It kept the general idea though. Chess skills reawakening. Poison pawns, daring dance. That's the move that we're doing. Victory or fall means the defeat. So I don't think this is a haiku 575, but it kept all of the meaning of the original. So that's like kind of the shortest version, right? We shortened it into just syllables. So that's it. Thank you for watching and have a good one.